Hello, Internet. My name is John Kulas. I am a 20-year professor of R for statistical applications. And for the last 6 or 7 years, I've also been using R to author things like academic papers and slide presentation decks and technical reports and feedback reports. And so every week, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, I get together with some colleagues and collaborators on authoring projects, and we just kind of make ourselves available if anyone wants to pop by and ask a question about how to do something. If you're interested in getting started with using R as an authoring platform, or if you're currently doing it and maybe stuck or just want to bounce ideas off of someone. Our thinking is that there's a lot of tutorials out there and they're great and they're helpful, but there's nothing really dynamic. So we thought we would just hold these virtual office hours and make ourselves available if anyone wants to pop by and drop a comment in the section or question in the comments. I see from my video I'm sporting a nice shiny new white t-shirt here. It's a gift from our most loyal participant here in this weekly session, so thank you. Each week, because we haven't had a lot of participation here in terms of other people wanting to come in and chat or ask a question or just bounce ideas, what we've been doing is we've been having focal issues that we kind of just take a look at. And it's been really helpful, I think, for us. For me, anyway. I don't want to speak for other panelists who pop by, but for me, it's been really helpful having these focal issues where we just can concentrate on one aspect of using R as an authoring platform. But they are intended to be somewhat, we do intend to go into these not fully vetting the feature. So we want to explore and make mistakes and kind of just show the way that we problem solve these things as well. And so because that's open-ended and exploratory, what we also do each week at the beginning is we'll recap what happened the previous week in terms of the feature that we focused on and hopefully present that in a more linear and easily digestible manner. And so last week we looked at something that Diego was interested in, and I didn't really know what this was about. And last week I had a lot of internet issues too. I think I may have, knock on wood, somewhat, if not resolved, at least improved those. So I'm hopeful that today is going to be better. And if so, then I think the solution might work going forward, not just today, but in future weeks as well. So this last week, what we looked at were called parallax backgrounds, and this was a feature in the slide decks that we're using, which we're going to cover again today. So we're going to focus on slides again today. But a feature whereby the background here, the Green Lantern, I think that's the Hal Jordan version of the Green Lantern. The background will kind of track with you as you navigate across the slide deck, and it's kind of something neat. It's something neat that was introduced in Reveal.js, which is the open source, I don't know if you call it a platform or just kind of open source system, I guess, that Quarto uses to also be able to render these nice looking slides. I think they're nice anyway. Nice looking slides that we see here weekly. So we'll take a brief look at those parallax backgrounds, revisit them, and then today we will focus, I think, most of our time on something that came up last week. And we're finding that we do this quite a bit on these open office hours. It's easy to find a feature because of that open exploration each week. It's not at all unusual to stumble across something and say, well, how does that work? Or how do I control that a little better? And so one of the parallax background features that we noticed was some of our slides were transitioning from left to right and some were transitioning from top to bottom, and that was tracking across the background image. I feel like I just blessed people. I'm not a Catholic priest, so I don't have the authority to do that, but if you are watching, bless you anyway. Thank you. But so we were tracking this background image sometimes horizontally, sometimes vertically, and we kind of know how to have some exert some control over that in terms of the Quarto specification of these slides. But we wanted to dig into it a little deeper, and I think we'll see if we can maybe exert more control than what we had last week in terms of where the slides go, where they come from, what they look like. And then we also might even just get into navigating these slides using the options that are available either by default or options that we might actually want to build. And so I always put the link to the slides in the comments, and so there's a hyperlink there if anyone stumbles across this and is interested in exploring those slides. Last couple of weeks, these haven't been all that elaborate or intricate. We do, I'm glad that those URLs, at least so far, are staying active because looking back, we did have, a few weeks where we had really, I think, useful resources on some of these topics in terms of the slides. Today's, I didn't put a whole lot in there, but so let's do our transition here, see what the boys are up to, leading us into our recap of what happened last week.
Well, Rocky and Bullwinkle reached the Pottsylvanian border with the mooseberry bush still intact. But now it seemed that they were going to be stopped just inches short of their goal. For when their friends, the Moonmen, slipped across the border without proper papers, the Pottsylvanian sentry became so enraged that he raised his weapon and pointed it at our heroes.
Hey, now, that thing might be loaded.
Might be. Is loaded.
Stand back, Rocky. I'll protect you. Oh, they got me. Goodbye, Rocky.
Where you going?
I'm going west. Where do you think?
Yeah, but you weren't hurt.
I'm not?
No, look.
Sure enough, on the other side of the border stood Cloyd, the Moonman, with his trusty Scrooch gun.
Well, somebody got hit.
Sure, look.
It's the sentry. He's been scrooched. Froze solid.
Yep.
Scrooched. I might have to steal that. I kind of like that word. I'm not sure technically what being scrooched means, but it's a nice word. What do they call that when the the label for the thing sounds like the sound that the thing would produce? Is that an onomatopoeia? Maybe. Sorry, I'm showing my ignorance here, but maybe scrooch is an onomatopoeia. So the parallax backgrounds really, and again, we have just kind of a GIF here of scrolling, and so that's really the main kind of noticeable feature of these parallax backgrounds was the scrollability, and maybe what we'll do is we'll reproduce that. I didn't reproduce it on this week's slides because it does get a little gets a little less easy to navigate the slides, so it definitely violates the principle of just kind of keeping it simple, and not too elaborate. But maybe we'll reproduce one of these parallax images just to kind of remind people what this actually looks like. The way these are implemented, and the way we implemented them with Quarto and R, there's in R Markdown, of course, there's usually multiple ways to do the same thing. But the way we chose to do it was consistent with the documentation on the Quarto webpage and help pages, which are getting a lot easier to navigate, by the way. So the first time in there, kind of like using base R and R package help PDFs, the documentations that are published in a standardized format on CRAN boy, I was warned when I first started using R that it's going to take a long, long time to be able to navigate those, and it was true. It was sometimes colloquially people just say it's a steep learning curve, but it was a little different than that. So the openness to different disciplines, I think, has some real advantages, but to maybe the social and behavioral sciences, I think we might be a little further removed from some other disciplines that maybe are historically affiliated or aligned a little more closely with the hard sciences. Anyway, so it took a real long, or maybe I'm just kind of dense. So it took a really long time to be able to use those CRAN template package and base R PDFs in a kind of competent manner. And so I think the same thing kind of has been happening here with Quarto and the help pages there. So those have become a lot more useful over just blunt force getting in there and trying to get through them. But so the lines 4 through 13 that I've highlighted here, this just goes in the YAML, the front matter of whatever you're trying to render, whatever you're interested in making. And the format that, when we start playing with these documents that we want to render and we start to exert a little more of our customization in terms of how we want it to look, we're seeing that this indent level really becomes important. So regardless of whether this was a Reveal.js presentation deck or it was an HTML file or it was a PDF or a Word document, whatever it is that we're interested in producing, if you want to exert more control over the way that looks, the format is typically, and the way this is structured is, instead of putting Reveal.js on the end of line 4 after format colon, and then say what the format is, which is how all the Quarto templates and our markdown templates tend to be structured. If we want to exert more control, we use a hard return and an indent, first level indent, and then we use a second level indent below that first level indent. So the lines 6 through 13 are where we start to exert some of that customization and kind of deviation from default. And so there's a series of, and we didn't really push it. We didn't put this one to a stress test. Sometimes we look at a feature and we'll put it through kind of what we internally refer to as a stress test. That just is, well, let's see if we can break it, or let's see if we can go beyond the documentation. We didn't do much of that last week. Last week, again, I had real bad internet issues, so it was kind of we didn't unfortunately have the opportunity to kind of stress it like maybe we normally would want to. But we just used the 4 standard recommended control commands for the parallax implementation. And so these are stacked here together. They don't need to be, but there's no reason not to. And just probably good practice to keep all things together that are related to the same thing that you're trying to render. The background image is pretty self-explanatory. You can save this locally and pull from a local folder, or really what I've been trying to do with the slides in particular for these weekly office hours is I've been trying to pull from a URL. So if anyone grabs the source file, the what's known as a QMD, known by the 3-letter extension on the end of the file, if anyone grabs the QMD, they should be able to just run it without needing a locally saved image, because it'll just grab an image from the internet as long as you have internet access. And so that line 7 there, www.awesomebackground.png, that's not a real URL. So I wanted this to fit within the same window here, so just made one up. But you also, if we specify this in the YAML, that background image, whatever it is that you find, the awesome background that you found and you want to actually showcase, that's going to be present on every single slide within your presentation. And of course, when we're doing these things, part of the control and the customization that we want is we want to be able to break that a little bit. So we want to be able to deviate from there. And one of there's a very kind of simple way to deviate, and that is to just use a little CSS within the title of your slide. And maybe if I reproduce this, we'll go back and do that again. But we found a real easy kind of way to bypass it just by using that bracketed span. So square brackets around the title and then curly brackets next to it with this background image specified. And that will, for the current slide or the focal slide, just give whatever background image it is that you want to supersede or you want to give priority. Now you're going to lose the scrollability using this sort of override, but you can get away from the parallax background if you'd like to. This background size in all of these image type applications, we're seeing that you can specify pixels, you can specify inches, and then when you get into fonts, there's things like EM and REM, relative M and M. I just said M and M, didn't I? Now I'm getting hungry. But it's probably a good idea to try to specify the background size if your slide deck is large, because what's going to happen is that background is going to start to tile. And by tile, I mean it's going to repeat itself. Any of those of you out there who may have used computers in the 90s, you may remember one of the big things about customization. I don't know if people still do it, but you always wanted to get your own background image on there, and there's some people preferred to tile it, and some people preferred to just have one big blow up of the image. By playing with that width and height specification here, either in pixels or probably inches is probably the way you want to do it. You can exert a little more control over that tiling. Now there's trade-offs, because if you make it really, really big, you're only going to see a portion of your image on any one slide. But that way you can avoid tiling. And so one of the things Diego and I spoke about last week, and I know I'm guessing it would annoy him more than me because I don't mind fiddling with little finicky things like that. But we were talking about how it might be a little frustrating just kind of rendering the slide and messing a little bit with the pixel specification just to get it just right. You can envision scenarios where you're just kind of, you're changing the 2100 to 1800 and it's not quite right, and you try 1850 and that's too big, and so it can get a little wonky that way if you want to be really control freak over what that background image looks like, but the feature is there. And then the horizontal and vertical scrolling, these are really neat, I think, and these are really helpful. So I believe that number there, the 200 and the 100, so the 200 on line 11 and the 100 on line 13, I believe those are in the unit that's specified on line 9, but we didn't verify that, so I'm not 100% sure. Regardless, a larger number means you're going to travel a longer distance going from slide to slide in terms of your background image. A smaller number means you're just going to progress smaller. So that's another way to play with the size of your image on line 9 with how far you scroll or how far you actually move when you're using that parallax background. And so I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to copy that. And so all of these bits of code are enabled such that you can just hit that clipboard that will appear upon hover and copy it. And I think we'll introduce that into a QMD file, and we'll do a quick playing with it just to see what that parallax looks like. And then the majority of today, I think what we'll spend the most time on is just kind of exploring some of these slide navigation options. And so as we progress through these slide decks, which it's definitely become my preferred way to construct presentation slides. I can't ever see going back to PowerPoint, even on something that doesn't require or present our code or our analyses or our visualizations. It's slick and it's so easy to share. I guess in circumstances where I had something confidential or something where we wanted to have some level of security. Maybe I could be talked out of, you know, doing everything with this, but for the stuff that I do, I don't really see any reason to ever go back to something like a Google slide or a PowerPoint. I'm really, really, really liking, and we've only done these HTML files. You can also do Beamer presentations, which is a LaTeX analogous slide option. So those would be, I understand, I believe those would be rendered in something like a PDF format. Now we can also get a PDF from these reveal slides. It's one of the built-in default options in terms of the tools here. I can just ask for a PDF export, and then I get my standard print preview or save it. And you see, you can probably play around a little bit with this. There's some white that's appearing on the upper and lower, and I obviously am going to lose. I shouldn't say obviously because it's maybe not that obvious, but I'm going to lose that interactive element. So the information upon preview that I had on the HTML version of this slide, for example, I'm gonna actually lose that. Now, hyperlinks should be okay. So I still have hyperlinks embedded, for example, on this slide number. What is it? Slide number 6, I guess. This slide navigation title does have a hyperlink, and if I click on it right now, I go there and it looks fine. So slick stuff, I think, if you needed a PDF. But let's go ahead and let's take a look at that parallax background just one last time before. I'm stalling a little bit, hoping that Diego shows up. But we'll go ahead and copy this again. And then in my, all of these, not just slides themselves, the slides are hosted thanks to Posit, which I'm not getting paid by that company, but I can't give them enough praise for the resources and tools that they make available to people to use their helpful products. And so we've been hosting on Posit's free space, and no one from Posit has ever come to me and said, hey, you got too much space taken up or anything remotely similar to that. So anyway, in addition to having the slides themselves accessible in that hyperlinked URL, all of the script that's used to create all the slides is always available on a repository as well on GitHub, which is how primarily Diego and I, but it's how we communicate and share and collaborate on things like slides like this and other authoring projects. And so, why did I mention that? I forget why I was mentioning that. But the repo itself, I think the reason I mentioned it is the repo itself is starting to get a little crowded. One of the things I did this afternoon was I cleaned it up a little bit, and then I made this what I call weekly_test_template.qmd. So this is just an empty Quarto document that we should be able to go into and just kind of play or demonstrate whatever it is that we're interested in playing with or demonstrating. Now, the only reason I did that is because in the repo, if anyone were to go in the repository, the repo is just a shorthand way of saying repository. But if anyone unfamiliar with what we're doing were to go in there, it's starting to get a little overwhelming. And so I think we'll just overwrite this file on a weekly basis if we need to. Let's look for a nice little image that we want to put in terms of our background. I don't know. Let's see what pleasant backgrounds are. I'm doing my, okay, well, those do look kind of pleasant, don't they? This one looks nice and naturey. Let's do that. So I'm going to copy the image address, and then now, one of the things that we're still kind of playing with, and not all that, I'm going to speak for myself here, not all that knowledgeable of is the times in which the quotes or double quotes are important and the times at which they're not. Now, again, it's not something we've stressed. Maybe we could try it here as long as we just have this kind of very silly small slide. Um, but on at least in terms of what we know works, these defaults that not defaults, but the specifications that we had in the example slide in the today's slide deck, I'm just going to leave those numbers in there for now and we can play with them. I did carry those numbers up. I think they were okay with a hard return, but I just want to see first if we get our image from our URL here. Probably should give this a couple of slides at least. And so you can kind of see here how we get the structure of the title slide that we have by common convention when we do these weekly slides. And that BR is HTML code for break. And so that renders as R4 on one line and then authoring on the next. And then we don't use an author, we just say the second line of what we're interested in here. And this is going to look a little different because we don't have my CSS, my long list of overriding CSS. It's not called out here, so we're going to get a standard slide deck. But I think we will go in and give it a couple of slides in here. So we can just call it slide 1, slide 2. And I'm going to give them different level headings because that is something that's important as we're learning about navigation. So first level heading on 1 and 4, and second level headings on slides 2 and 3. And I think I can just leave those empty, but let's go ahead and see if we get a parallax version of our, I already forgot what it was, but kind of nature-ish background. There we go. All right. I don't know why it went straight to slide 4 on my preview. But now, if I navigate this, and the way I'm navigating it, there's a couple of different ways. And I think that's one of the things we're going to take a look at. Is that my screen, or is that... There's like ducks in there, but I think I have scratches on my screen. Probably can't see that if you're just watching, but uh-oh. This has revealed a problem with one of my monitors. So there's slide 1, we go from left to right. Slide 1 to 2, here you see that transition going down, and this is one of the things that we wanted to take a look at today. And so see if we can exert a little more control over that. Now the other thing you see is you're seeing slide 1, the font and the location. The font is fairly large and the location looks left justified. Now if I go from slide 1 to slide 2, you see that font gets a little smaller and now it's top justified. It's still left justified, but it's not centered vertically. Now we have a top justification in terms of vertical alignment. 3 is on the same level of 2, so 3 and 2 go down, and then 4 goes again left to right. Now 4 did not just go left to right, if you notice, but it went from lower left to upper right. So that's actually doing, in my mind, it's doing 2 different movements. And I think I know why that is. And I think we will maybe revisit that when we look at navigation, which I'll go ahead and do right now. I guess we can just use this as kind of our playing around with navigation idea. Now I have a bunch of tabs open here. I gotta find the one that I would really like to show. I guess we could look at this one. So this isn't a Quarto help page. This is a Reveal.js help page. And again, Reveal.js stands alone outside of Quarto. There's people that contribute to this, and it's just kind of a slide authoring open source option. And so the Quarto help pages and the Quarto documentation parallels a lot of what we're seeing here from the revealed JS people. Now, if we were to explore this a little more, we could probably see who they are. I'm not sure who they are. Honestly, I didn't look that much into it. Who's hmmm? Okay, well, thank you, hmmm. He's in Sweden. Could be sponsored. He's helped me out a lot, so if I had the means, I might look into sponsoring him, but that's not something I can do right now. So, this was a helpful page just to know that other people are doing similar things with their construction outside of R and Quarto, which is good because there's other people that are probably going to have issues and problems, and the more people that have issues and problems with this open source stuff, the more likely it is that we're going to find a solution to it. And so here, this tells us that by default, and again, this isn't Quarto, but that's okay because Quarto is taken from this, and Quarto looks to track almost entirely with the information that we're seeing here. And it's saying that we're using a horizontal sliding transition by default. Horizontal here just means left to right. And they're considered the main or top level slides, and we see that in our markdown specification. We see that with these first level headers. So a single hashtag means first level header. Now, one of the things that's going to be affected is not just sliding vertically or horizontally, but we're also seeing in our outline here, you're seeing that the outline is also specified. And this is related to, or I guess you could also say another consequence of having a first level heading and a second level heading is they're coming in nested like this. Now, the reason I think on slide 3 we go from the lower left both up and right, whereas on these we're either going horizontal or vertical, we're not going both, has to do with the default specification of how those vertical slides are being aligned. So the slide deck here is saying that there must be something tying slides 2 and 3 to slide 1. It looks like if we were to treat this as an outline, slide 2 and 3 are both nested within slide 1. Now, slide 4 should be considered equal to slide 1, and that's why we're going from down to up. If we were to put more slides in here, we should transition further vertically. So let's try that. So let's actually, we'll go back and we'll change that. But I'm going to put in slide 4, or let's start calling these subdivisions of 1, because that's really what's going on here with them. Slide 1D, and then we no longer have slide 4, we just have slide 2. So my expectation here is that as we transition from the subsets of what used to be called slide 2 and slide 3, we're going to go down 2 more here. So when we go to the new slide 2, I think we'll travel further. So let's take a look here how far we're traveling. We're going from, there's not a great marker on there, is there? Let's look for a different, well, no, we'll stick with this background. So let's go ahead and render this. And we'll see if that transition from 1D to 2 just pops up a lot more. So it should. We should be going further down here. So 1A, 1B, 1C. Oh yeah, we're going like under the water. There's some of that tiling that you're seeing. Yeah, and so now if I go to 2, I'm traveling a lot further vertically. I'm traveling a lot further vertically. There's a really kind of neat, where'd it go? There's a really neat overview of this. I think I might have lost it. I have so many tabs open. I believe it was one. There we go. there's a neat transition of this here on the Reveal.js vertical slides tab. And they're showing you what's going on here as we're advancing from, and again, they're using that kind of subset notation as well. They're not saying A, B, C, D, they're using a dot one, dot two, dot three convention, but the same general idea. And so what they're saying is the top level ones should all be given the same priority. They're all being seen on the same level. Now, the thing that the Reveal.js people have done, which is also possible in Quarto, and maybe we'll do that next, but you're seeing on the lower right, if you can, you're seeing 4 arrows pop up, and those arrows are telling you where you can navigate. And so when we get to slide 2.1, you don't just have an option of left or right, you also have the option of down. And so as they go down with that down arrow, you're seeing that now you have another option, which is to go up. And so there's a default in Quarto where we don't have this. So what this is showing is this is saying you can bypass slides 2.2 and 2.3 if you want. So maybe that's extra information. Maybe that's essentially a hidden slide, right? So if someone in the audience has a question about something, or you want to go more into detail, but it's not a priority, maybe it's something you want to address if you have time. This sort of navigation is something that you would want to enable, because you can go down to slide 2.2 and 2.3 if you want, but you don't have to. And so let's see if we can implement that before we do other things. And so this, I believe, is the way in which we can tell Quarto that yes, we want to be able to skip slides, or no, we don't need to do that. And so what I've been doing as we've been looking at these is I've just been hitting my cursor key here. Both left and right and up and down seem to work okay, I believe, if I remember what happened. So the default is if you just kind of tab over, then you're gonna transition. And so let me just verify that that's the case. So I just hit the up arrow to go backwards. I'm hitting the down arrow to go to the next one. Down, 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 down. Up, 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 up. Gives me back. I can also go right. So right, 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 right. So either up, down, left, right, they work the same way on the default specification within Quarto. Now it looks like it's spelled a little differently. Again, I have too many things open. It looks like it's a little different in the specification here. So maybe that's not the default. It looks like the default in Quarto is probably this linear option. So it says left, right arrows, step through all slides, possibly, or maybe it's a little bit tweaked even. Grid is, I think, the one that we might want to check out here. So grid is saying that if we have vertical stacks, then I should be able to move back and forth across those vertical stacks. And so if we want to be able to exert a lot of control over how these slides are navigated, we could play with something like grid. So let's do that. And I'm not sure. It says vertical slide, horizontal slide. We'll leave that tab open, but I'm going to jump over to Quarto and see if we can understand the commands that we want to focus on for Quarto. So side with numbers, that's not what we want over. And we can go back and look at these too, by the way. They do highlight, and I keep forgetting to use this when we're navigating our slides, but these slide zooms are some of my absolute favorite features about these presentations. You can, alt and click on any section of the slide and it will zoom. And I don't know, that to me is almost just by itself kind of a game changer with something like this versus a PowerPoint or a Google slide. Oh my gosh, I need some water. I can't say the word Google. So the navigation options, I think, is probably where we want. Nope, that's not it. Chalkboard. We should go in and try chalkboard. I've tried that before. I don't know if we've ever tried it on this live stream, but it's something that people should know about. I'm just kind of scrolling through here looking for those keywords of vertical and grid in here. So I think I need to skip to a different section. There they are. And so it looks like navigation mode. So navigation mode is something that we can initiate here. And I think, yeah, so here it says the vertical or grid. So we thought that default was, well, they might be calling the default value here vertical within Quarto parlance. I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't look like the options are exactly the same. They don't have default linear and grid, but we do have default. Oh, what am I looking at? Why did something seem different? Linear vertical grid versus default linear grid. So vertical maybe is default. It's possible. So it gets confusing. Maybe I'll just X out of the help page for Reveal.js itself, and we'll just look at the Quarto help page. So we should be able to play a little bit with these different options for navigation, specifically if you want to nest your slides in terms of prioritization and kind of jump around with them. I think the one that's probably going to look the most different is grid. So let's go ahead and see if we can put that in here. Now again, you got to be kind of careful with the level of indentation that you do. It looks to me like this is the same level of indentation as is our parallax specification. I'm going to put in a few slide 2 subheadings. We won't do as many as slide 1. So we'll see, what that looks like. We'll go ahead and render this. And then now with the grid oh, I'm sorry, I did vertical. Well, let's take a look at vertical first and see what happens. So with vertical, ooh, we do now have an arrow here. Let's go to the title page. So now with vertical, if I use the up and down keys, it does not like that. I am getting more visual feedback, and I'll blow it up here so maybe you can see it, but that right arrow is telling me that my option for this slide to the next is I can either use the cursor to press that, or I can use the right key. Now I have two options, right? So vertical enabled within the YAML is telling me I can go right, I can go down. If I go down now, because I haven't played with this at all. This is not the way I do presentations, but because I have two that are aligned on the same level underneath the first level heading, it's telling me that I can go down a little more on slide 1A, or I could also go over. So if I go over, I'm at slide 2. Man, this is gonna get really wonky really quickly. If I'm back at slide 1, you see I can go all 4 directions now. I could go back to the title page. I could go up to slide 1. I can go down further. I could keep going down to slide D. Now, if I press over, I go all the way up to slide 2, which is what I was curious to see. So we know we have a 2B correlate to 1B. So now if we press over, it again just gives priority to the first level heading. So if you're someone that's giving a lot of presentations, you probably want to play around with this a little bit, at least be aware that these options exist. So that's vertical. So vertical, if I wanted to exit out of this first stack of 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and I said it's fine at 1B, I don't need to do C and D, I can just hit that right arrow and that'll bring me to the top stack of the next set. So that brings me all the way to the first level heading. That it seemed like has more flexibility with, I want to go to the second level heading on the second set of slides, was grid, right? I guess I'm talking to myself, but I think it was grid. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go to the title page again, and I do note that I do have my same helper arrows there that are visible and showing up the same here as well. But now what should be different is, whereas before with the vertical specification, when I hit let's go right, it brought me not to the slide that's aligned with the level of nest. Now my expectation here is if we go right, it's truly going to be right. That is, it should be 2A, not 2. Yeah, there we go. So that's working fine. I guess the question is, what's it going to do when we go down to 1C? Because there's no 2C. So I almost said Watusi. Saying Watusi is better than dancing Watusi, I would say. So if we press it now, it goes to the nearest level. So it goes to the one that's closest aligned. So grid looks like you can probably get and so 1D should also go to 2B because that's the closest. And if this is getting confusing to follow, you can see it here in terms of 4 slides nested under the first one, whereas I only have 2 slides nested under the second slide. And so when we're saying, as we move from 1C or 1D over on the grid specification, it's going to, in this particular case, is slide 2B. If we wanted to add a third one there, and we're down at 1C or 1D, both of those should go over to 2C. This is probably how they named the droids in Star Wars. So something like R2D2, I would imagine, would stem from a discussion like this. Some random dude just yelling into a black hole internet. Although they didn't have the internet back then, did they? So if I go from C, yep, it goes to the right, and then the expectation is D would also jump up to C, and it does. Okay. So the one that we did not take a look at was, we don't need pleasant background anymore. The one that we didn't take a look at was linear. Is that right? I think we looked at vertical. And we looked at grid, we didn't look at linear. So let's take a look at that and see what difference that has on our transitions and our navigation. Looks like I lost my arrows again. So on the vertical as well as the grid, I really like those visual arrows that were appearing. And that should be themed, so that should be something that changes theme. Built-in themes, there's about 12 of them, I think, that you can choose from, or based on any sort of specialization CSS that you want to lay on top. So I'm pressing now just the down button, and the down button is taking me through all of those. I am also pressing I'm now pressing the side button, and the side button is taking me through all of those as well. So what this is verifying for me is that the default specification within Quarto is this, what we just did. The default specification is linear. The vertical I think is kind of neat, and I could see myself. Well, I don't see myself really nesting slides, but if I did, I think this vertical one is probably one that I might be tempted to use. I do like not interacting with the mouse, but I do like the visual cue of the arrows that are telling me what's possible to press on the keyboard. So that's kind of neat. There were a couple other things. Looks like I'm just solo tonight, so I don't think I'm going to go through all of these, but let's go through a couple of other options that we have here in terms of navigating. Touch, that's not going to help me here on my desktop. If you had, pad, that's certainly something that you could take a look at. Here's another help page that I pulled up earlier that I thought had some neat ideas on it. Chalkboard, I mentioned. Maybe we could. I know we're supposed to be focused on navigation, but in the very close adjacent to the navigation section, they had this chalkboard option, and it is just really neat. If you need some, if you need some extra incentive to jump from something like Google Slide, or why can't I say Google tonight? From Google Slide or PowerPoint to something like this, that chalkboard might be something that interests you. Now it's kind of hard to see with the background that we have, so let's get a different background in here. I thought it was pleasant, but I'm kind of sick of looking at it. We'll do the Pink Panther because I like the Pink Panther. Maybe we can get a dark background on that. Boy, that's, I don't know if this is going to be annoying or not. But we'll go ahead and put that in as our background image that we will parallax across. It is a square, so I'm just gonna keep it a square in terms of my specifications so we don't skew it too much. We don't want to give the Pink Panther too big of a nose, so we'll try to be good about that. There he is. My uh-oh. What happened there? Well, now that was unexpected. So when we popped from preview, we somehow lost the background. That feels more glitchy than anything. But that's definitely unexpected. It might have something to do with the size of the image. Maybe I just had it way too big. We can try toning that down a little bit. It may be that my numbers aren't possible or trackable here relative to each other. So we'll take a look at that. So it makes it smaller. Again, we're getting that tiling, which I'm not a big fan of. You know what it is? It might be the chalkboard that we have. So those things might not be playing well with each other. So let's go ahead and comment out the chalkboard for a second and see if our big slide comes in okay. No, it's not the chalkboard. Could be the type of image we have here. Oh, yeah, it's not specifying JPEG, PNG, etc. I have noticed that that can be an issue. Not always, but can be an issue. So let's get a more traditional image in there and see if that takes care of it. And by more traditional, again, what I like this one. By more traditional, I'm just saying I'm looking for something that has a PNG, a JPEG, or other sort of explicit specification. Whoa, these are really coming in weird. Not supposed to have that many issues just with a simple image. I think this one is a transparent background because I think we used that in our example. What is going on? I'm not getting any normal file names here. But it does pop out okay. Uh, well, we weren't going to spend the rest of our time monkeying with this so much, but I am kind of curious to see if we can figure out what's going on here with it. So let's try one more. Definitely didn't. There we go. This is something that we're going to be more comfortable with. The file type is specified there at the very end of the file path. And of course, because of our squaring of the tile, it's coming in a little bit squished. This is something we probably want to blow up again. And it goes width first, height second. So this natural image is coming in a little more vertical. So we'll go ahead and do that. Looks like I did it too much. So we'd want to scrunch them down a little bit. And you're starting to see some of that monkeying around that I was alluding to earlier. In terms of, you can probably lose a lot of time just playing with the numbers there and the specifications. Okay, so we want to see if we can take a look and see what that chalkboard looks like. It looks like the preview or the image that we lost upon preview was not a conflict with chalkboard. I'm gonna go to an intermediate slide here just so we get the arrows lit up. So I have all 4 arrows here because I can go any direction within my nested slides. And then the chalkboard information is here just with that simple specification, one line. This is built in to the capability of this type of file. If I just put chalkboard true, and I think there's probably a little more control that we can exert over that. I get these 2 additional icons here next to my menu. And those 2 additional icons, one of them lets me just scribble. So if we want to give him a mustache, we can give him a mustache. Now that mustache should stay here. Let's give him a purple mustache, actually. That mustache should stay here on this slide. And of course, normally you wouldn't want a mustache, but mustaches are fun. So we should do a goatee, actually. I'm not going to do the devil horns because I think that's mean. But we'll give him a goatee. Now, I think I can probably exit that by re-engaging with this paintbrush icon down here. So it brings up a palette and then it hides the palette. Ha! Look at that. So that's kind of neat. I wasn't expecting that. What I'm referring to here, where were we? It looks like it did erase, maybe because I took it off. Where was the goatee? It looks like it did erase the goatee. There's another slide deck option that we used to use, me and the people who are collaborating with me on some of these projects, we used to use prior to Quarto, and that was Jeringen. And Jeringen has a feature similar to this chalkboard. I think I don't believe it's called chalkboard, but the functionality is essentially equivalent. With that feature, the scribbling that you did would remain even though you navigated further in the slide deck. So if you came back to it, the scribbling would still be there. This chalkboard itself is just an actual writing space, and you can advance past that. This one does stay, so you can actually have multiple pages there of scribbling, or you probably want to say something nicer than scribbles. I'm not a great mouse writer or speller, I guess. But if we want to come back to that, it's there. And so, kind of a neat option with these slides. Let's do one more navigation feature here, and then we can probably, maybe next week we'll revisit more animation, because we didn't get into the menu options so much. And the menu options are kind of neat too. I guess one of the things I wanted to play with was the way in which those slides appear. And the slides appear, and you can see the help pages here are fairly consistent. So Quarto has taken the Reveal.js help pages and really kind of paralleled them very heavily, which is nice. Actually, it's good, and it's one of the probably benefits of having an open source platform is just kind of this culture of yeah, go ahead and take what we've already done, and you can use it for your purpose because we just want everyone to use this and to be able to use it effectively. So we have speed and we have transition itself. I'm going to take the background parallax off just because it's getting a little crowded on here. I'm going to take the chalkboard off as well. And let's just take a look at the default the default slide titles. And so I'm going to render this. We'll lose our nice Pink Panther. I think I do want to have the navigation such that we get our arrows. So I shouldn't have got rid of that. So let's actually reinstitute that. We'll do hard return and one indent for the Reveal.js. And then, was it navigation? Navigation mode, yeah. And I think we liked the vertical. No, vertical is default. We liked the linear, I believe. I'm saying we in the royal sense. Whatever that means. I have no idea what that means. I don't see arrows there, so it must have been vertical. Yep, there we get our arrows. So, okay, I like that. Now, the other feature that we wanted to take a quick look at was how those pop in. So I'm going to get rid of that. I got too many slides open. Pink Panther we don't need anymore. Where? I lost apparently how we got in. So let's take another look at that. So the Quarto slide navigation, you can see I've actually taken a look at this previously. And then I think we want slide transitions is what we were looking at. And so backgrounds we're not going to worry about that right now. We just maybe want to see what these different options are. Fade, slide, convex, concave. Now that we know that we can go across, we can go down, and that's effective if we do this nesting in terms of first and second level headers. It does make sense in terms of, well, hopefully it makes sense, but it seems logical the way that everything's kind of related to each other. So this looks, I don't know, I don't think that looks any different. Maybe that's the default, is fade. You can see that it's coming in, or slide. That slide is coming in really quickly. And I know there was a speed that we saw on here as well. So let's take a look at the transition speed. Default fast or slow. So let's see if we can do slow on that. Let's see if we notice any difference. The copying and pasting, if you do it piecemeal like I'm doing, the indentation, just pay attention to it. It might not paste it. You might have grabbed a tab that you didn't intend to grab. I'm guessing it's already fast because to me that looks like it's sliding in pretty quickly. But let's explicitly say fast and see what that looks like. Ooh, that is speedy. Okay, there's definitely a difference there. Slow and default are others. I think we already know what default looks like. I was interested in slowing it down. That's not that, well, the exit isn't that slow, but the entrance to me looks fairly slow. Okay, so that's the slide transition. Sorry, using the word slide too many times. Let's just try these other options that we have, and then we can call it a night. Listen to me talking like I'm still a professor. You can call it a night anytime you want. Um, there is a none transition, and that probably, and we'll leave transition speed in there for now. It might throw an error. It probably will just ignore it. Um, oh, yeah, that's not bad. I don't mind no transition, honestly. And I really, the more we focus on these navigation modes in terms of vertical, linear, or grid, the vertical. And I'm finding myself clicking more too, actually. Now, the location of these arrows, you've probably noticed they changed here, but they changed because of the size of my preview window versus a full screen. We can also exert some level of control over where those appear in this full screen as well. We're going to run out of time tonight for that, but maybe that's something that we can take a look at next week, because I think this is enough content to maybe do a second week on this. So let's just run through the options here. So we have none, and these are the options. Get fancier and try to introduce something that's not already baked in, but it looks to me like they got some nice ones. This is fade. So fade does not look that different from none. You can see there is a slight muting. Maybe if I blow it up, it's a little easier to see. There's a slight muting of a little bit. It dims and comes in, and to me, that's the difference that I'm seeing. Now, the transition speed was already set at slow, so it was kind of tough to see. It's gonna be very tough to see here with, I think I did speed up a little bit, so this one is very subtle, regardless of whether we set it at slow or fast. I'm not sure if if the transition speed is having much of an effect here with the fade effect. Slide, we already looked at. Convex, here we go. It's an interesting one. Did you keep in your minds the difference between convex and concave using the mnemonic of a cave? As I did. So a cave has kind of that indent at the mouth of it. So that's concave. Whoa! Look at that. That's awesome. All right, I got a new favorite. What is that? Convex. Convex rotates. And you can have some sick, you can have some sick presentation attendees, I guess, if you do. Be careful. Make sure you don't do this at like a seasickness convention. Oh, and then look at that. When we go down, it does the vertical. I like that. That's nice. It's the little things in life, I guess, that ultimately make you happy. Convex, that's my favorite. I'm actually gonna, we're keeping that one, so I'm gonna just comment that out, and then we can play with the other couple. To do speed on that, I don't care so much about speed anymore. I just love convex. If you're watching this and you see the next few weeks, you might, take Dramamine before you watch, because I'll probably be using that convex transition. Uh, oh, what is that? It's so similar, but I don't like it. That's weird. It's like just coming in from, what's the difference? I don't know what the difference is, but I don't like it as much. I've seen the word slide so much now that it's kind of lost its meaning. I don't know what the psychological effect is that explains that phenomenon, but I know it's happened to everybody. There's got to be a name for it, but I'm at that point with the word slide. You know what? I'm gonna slide, replace it with Farfignugan. That'll be much better. All right, concave we tried. Zoom is the last built-in one. Scale the incoming slide so it grows in from the center of the screen. Let's try zoom. These are neat. These are neater than I thought they would actually be. Whoa. Again, I don't. You can't do this after a big heavy meal. I don't know. I've seen. So this is something I've seen students do with like Canva or other kind of fancy presentation software. I'm not sure what I think about that. Convex, man, that's the way to go. Convex for the win, I think. I love convex. Love it, love it, love it. Let's set it back there before we drop. And then the other thing, I guess, and we can do this next week, but we can mix these up. So it doesn't need to be universal across slides. You can, using those bracketed spans, so square brackets and curly brackets together, you can actually override the YAML transition just at an individual slide level. Yes, convex. I love you, convex. Oh. I think I lost my StreamYard. There we go. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for popping in. And then next week, unless we hear from people who have a question or want something covered specifically, I think we'll probably take a second look at this and play with some more levels of control that we can exert over how the slides transition and how we navigate across those slides. Okay, thank you. Good night.